journey with us over this next hour to get educated, entertained, hopefully have a chuckle or two, and also take away something that is valuable to you, your life, and your journey as you journey from wherever you are to wherever you want to be. I'm Dr. John Robertson, a clinical psychologist and co-host of the Journey 2020. Here along with me is my co-host, Mr. Charles Morris.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. As you know, Dr. Robinson comes at me with these big words, and I keep forgetting to bring my dictionary. But hi, I'm Charles Morris. Welcome to the Journey 2020. Happy that you're with us on this Easter weekend. And later on in the show, we're going to have Pastor Jenkins come on, my pastor from True Vine Baptist Church, to tell us why we celebrate Easter. A few weeks ago, I was at the Young Fathers of Central Florida's conference and event where Mr. Crossman, John Crossman, who our guest today, came on, and he was there to receive an award. I think he's also one of the sponsors. He was talking about what he's trying to accomplish here with the historical black colleges and universities. So I was blown away listening to his story, listening to him talk about his father, also feeling his spirit. So I just think this is something that a story that needs to be told. More people need to hear more about it. So I think once you hear and feel his passion, you will feel the same way that I do.
Okay. What I would like to do is that I would like for you to introduce yourself and to kind of tell us your story. And because when you started talking about your father, I would have loved to have heard some of the conversation as he spoke to you as a child. Or I don't know if you have any sisters or brothers, but I can only imagine just some of the lessons that was being taught as a child, because I feel it. And when you spoke, I was like, wow, I would love to. Is your father still alive?
He's not.
Okay, but I'm sorry, but I would but I would love to have met him.
I appreciate that's very kind.
Okay.
Well, do you want me to talk a little bit about my background?
Yeah.
So my dad was Reverend Ken Crossman, and I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I have 3 older siblings, and they're all exceptional people.
Okay.
But Dad was a salesman and in the 60s, and he was working in South Florida and was the #1 salesman for Yardley of London, and felt a calling to go into the ministry. And so left that job, and he and my mom and my oldest sister and brother moved to Atlanta, where my dad went to Emory, and he got his theological degree from Candler School. And when he graduated, moved back to South Florida in Fort Lauderdale, which is where my sister and I were born. And that is really where he began his work. You know, Dr. King passed away in 1968 in Memphis, leading the sanitation worker strike. My father led the 1970 sanitation worker strike in Fort Lauderdale. So that's that was that connection there. In fact, my dad worked at Dr. King's funeral in Atlanta because he was there when he was still in seminary. So that's that background. So being a Methodist minister's kid, we moved around a lot. All different kind of. I always refer to that all 4 kids in my family all had different hometowns because we would move around all over the place. But the constant was Bethune-Cookman, because my dad was so close with Dr. Bronson, who was the president there, and wherever we were, Bethune-Cookman came to there. So I've always had a strong connection with Bethune-Cookman. Now, as a side note, I went to Florida State University, and I ran track there. And when I went to Florida State, my dad was friends with the chaplain at FAMU. So you go off to school and your parents might give you an emergency contact, you're in trouble.
Right.
My emergency contact at FSU was the chaplain at FAMU. So I always had, really placed my heart for both Bethune-Cookman and FAMU.
Right. Well, I just want to
please.
Say, some of our Rattlers, our FAMU viewers, will know that you have both Bethune-Cookman.
Yes, I do.
There's a FAMU association and also FSU.
Right.
So I think the only one we might be missing is University of Miami. Okay, so we'll go ahead.
Well, and just as a side note, I'm an honorary alum from the University of Florida, so I do a lot of work there.
Okay, so we got the little
we do, and I was recently appointed by Dr. President Mangum to the Foundation Board of FAMU. So when you saw me at the Onyx Awards and I introduced President Mangum as my president, that's why I said that, because I do serve there. But I wore my Bethune-Cookman colors today.
Okay.
So what I want to tell you was my dad was on dialysis, and he was terminally ill for about 9 years and dealt with that. And when we brought him home, he was with hospice and he was close to passing away. The last request he had before he passed away is that we create a scholarship in his memory at Bethune-Cookman University. And so we did. And so you can go down to the Reverend Kenneth C. Crossman Scholarship at Bethune-Cookman University. It's fully endowed, and so we have that there.
So just
Go
to
ahead,
pause
please.
again, young people who are applying to college and to Bethune-Cookman, okay, the Reverend Kenneth Crossman Scholarship.
Correct.
Okay.
Check it out.
All right.
And if you graduated and you went to Bethune-Cookman, donate to it so we can give more out to more students. So
Great, yeah.
both sides, you know, we got
Okay.
take and receive. That's how that works.
That's good, and I don't want to get you off the sequence, but that's one of the issues that has come up in some of our earlier programs, and that is the need for alumni
Right.
to give back.
Right.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Even if it's $5, even if it's $20, it's okay. I think there's a level of giving back. It's healthy for us all to do that.
Exactly.
Right? So in my job, and my brother and I are partners, and we have a company called Crossman and Company. It's a commercial real estate company. And through that, we've had a lot of passion for education. And about 7 years ago, I got asked by an organization called the ICSC, International Council of Shopping Centers, to create a scholarship for 25 universities across the country. And as I started to research, I had to rank all the universities for their real estate programs. I found that we had 331 universities represented in our organization. None of them were from historically black colleges. And then I further found out there's 106 historically black colleges across the country. None of them had a real estate program. None.
That's what I was going to ask you.
None.
Okay.
Now you might say, well, why is that? Well, there's a very clear line from slavery to Jim Crow laws to where we are today. You know, the historically black colleges were created to solve problems in the black community or deal with that and help out with that. And this one,
and also to assuage a little bit of white guilt after.
oh sure,
the
yeah,
Civil War.
that happens too.
Okay.
Happens too.
We get very real on
No. Listen. We can talk about white guilt. That's a funny. I've got thoughts on that.
Okay.
Anyway, my thoughts are is like, I'll take the money. You know,
Right,
like,
there
it's
you
not always
go.
the best, but if the money comes from it, fine. But anyway, so when we created this program, I said, let's rank 24 universities we're going to give scholarships to based on the fact that they had real estate programs. But let's do one based on planting the seed to create a relationship. And the university I picked was Florida A&M. And the reason why I picked Florida A&M is that Florida State University has an outstanding real estate program, and it's 1 mile away. And I said, so since I go to Tallahassee a lot, we can make that connection.
Ah, okay.
And we did. So the first real estate scholarship through this program at Florida A&M. And so about 6 years ago, I went to Florida A&M and I gave a lecture. And I challenged the students with, hey, I've got this scholarship for you. I want you to start a real estate club. And an 18-year-old freshman, listening it, a kid on the drum line, heard me speak, and came up to me. I found later he was a preacher's kid too, so you gotta like that.
Right, okay.
So he came up afterwards and he got in touch with me. He was the only one, and he founded the real estate club. And these 5+ years later, it's still there, Club Real at FAMU.
Wonderful.
And that young man's name was Thomas Bolin, and he now works for Crossman and Company.
Isn't that
So he
okay?
does, yeah.
Excellent.
So Thomas created that scholarship, and then last year I contacted Thomas because I got asked by that same organization if I could try to get all the scholarships we created endowed. And so I will tell you, it took me 2 emails to raise the money for University of Florida. It took me about 24 hours for FSU. It took me about 40 hours for UCF. FAMU was the hardest one. It broke my heart. And I remember being angry because I couldn't figure out how to raise this money. But
Well,
go ahead,
let me
please.
ask you, why do you think that was it was so difficult?
I think because probably the biggest thing is that there's not an alumni base from FAMU that's in real estate. There wasn't the easy ask. You know, there wasn't somebody who's a FAMU grad who's made lots of money in real estate that I could go and say, hey, let's honor your university. But you know what made me keep going? It's a true story. I had FAMU students donate $2. I'll have another one donate $2. And I thought, if these kids can try to find I can do it. And so I had done some business with a guy who had decided not to use my company on a deal. And it was a little bit of tension between me and him. And he knew I was upset with him. And long story short, I said, if you endow the scholarship, we're good. And he did.
Okay.
Remember you talked about white guilt?
Right, okay. As you said, you know,
It worked out.
they say right, everything needs necessary sometimes.
It's
So, you
okay.
know, yeah.
So we got scholarship, and so that was a big deal. But this is what I really want you to think about. I was lying on my couch on a Saturday morning, and I was thinking about my life, and I was thinking about the FAMU thing, and it was bothering me, you know, because here we have all these black universities, and you know the greatest wealth creation in the world is the ownership of property, right?
Okay.
We know that after.
I'm just going to ask you to say
Please.
that one more time.
The greatest wealth creator in the world is the
Okay.
ownership of property. And we know that African Americans were denied the right to vote through ownership of property. That's what it was. You couldn't register to vote unless you owned property, and then they wouldn't let after African Americans vote, and that was 100+ history in our nation.
Right.
Okay? And beyond that, and this is really important for you and your listeners know this, I lecture regularly at Florida State, Miami, FAU, USF, Florida Southern College, UNC, Ole Miss, Wharton School, and I meet lots and lots of great students. Having said that, if I took all those schools together and you say, well, how do they compare? They're pretty similar, and they're good. But there's a gap. And do you know what one university consistently has had the most impressive students? FAMU. Okay?
Interesting.
So my industry is not diverse. It's woefully not diverse.
Yeah, amen.
Well, it isn't. But they want to be.
Yeah.
The problem is they can't figure out how to recruit. So there was a gap there. A bridge needed to be created. And so I emailed Thomas, who was getting his MBA at FAMU, on a Saturday morning, and I said I'd done some research, just brainstorming, and I found out that the White House had an HBCU initiative. I didn't know what that was or what it meant. So I said, Thomas, I emailed him, I said, I want you to get us a call with the White House. Now, he was 22, got that email from me. He told me later he about fell out of his chair. But you know what he did? He figured it out.
He got that.
And he emailed me a little while later. He said, I got a call set with us at the White House. And so in July of last year, Thomas and I had a phone call with the White House. We were coming back from vacation. We're driving our minivan. I had to tell the kids, okay, be quiet. We were on the phone with the White House. And so I said to the contact of the White House, I said, this is a gap in the civil rights movement. This is a gap. This didn't get addressed. This is a way, how do you prevent a Ferguson, right?
Okay.
People own homes. If they own the buildings, if you own the business, that's one thing. If you own the building the business is in, it changes everything.
Exactly.
So it's a perfect storm, right?
Yeah.
And so this is how life gets more interesting. So the next month, okay, August, Thomas is graduating. And who is the keynote speaker at his graduation? The executive director of the White House HBCU initiative. Right?
Wonderful.
So I asked FAMU if Thomas and I together could meet with the executive director. And then I played a little bait and switch.
Okay.
I called Thomas. I said, are you ready for this meeting? And he said, yes, sir. And I said, well, guess what? You're going to do it by yourself. I'm not going to come. You're going to do it. And he did. He did.
Okay.
So then Thomas graduated, and I hired him, and we were trying to figure out what can we do to try to make another step. And I was brainstorming on a Saturday, trying to figure it out. And I have a friend. I say he's a friend. We are acquaintances. We're competitors, really. We compete with the same business. And he's a Jewish guy, and he lives in South Florida, and he's really big in the Democratic Party. And I emailed him, and I said, here's a white paper we wrote on black colleges, what we're trying to do. He emailed back very abruptly, and he said, well, what do you want me to do with this? And I emailed him back, and I said, well, I need to get in touch with some Democratic leaders to help with this. Because I have the support of Republicans and conservative white leaders. I need some Democrats to balance it out. It was very, well, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, so you know, I went to all these people and I knew them.
Oh, because you had those contacts.
I had those
already.
contacts.
Okay.
So, you know, Senator George Lemieux and Mayor Rich Karate and all these different, you know, conservative Republicans that I knew, they had done business with, they were easy to get. But I couldn't, how do I get the other side of the aisle? So he emailed me back and he said, well, get in touch with Congresswoman Corinne Brown. I emailed back and I said, well, she's not going to talk to me. And he emailed, well, she'll talk to me. And I said, well, would you talk to her?
Exactly.
Would you believe that he...
By the way, not to interrupt.
Please, please.
You know, Congresswoman Brown will talk to anyone if she feels that it's going to push her agenda. So just as a note. But anyway, go ahead.
So he emailed her, and on that Monday, I got a call and said, Congresswoman Brown will be in town on Friday and can meet with you. So young Thomas and I went to meet with Congresswoman Brown, and when we walked in, she was meeting with some pastors, and who was walking out was Reverend Bracey. Now, Reverend Bracy is a Bethune-Cookman guy, and he
Right.
knew that, so we hugged, and I think she knows that,
Uh-huh.
but when she sat down,
He actually went to both.
oh, he went to both, did he?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, which, that's good. That's all good.
Right. Exactly.
So anyway, so I sit down with her, and she was a little rough. I mean, she kept saying, "You people are trying to take away Sanford," and I said, "What? Do I represent all white people that have ever lived? I don't, you know." And I finally said, "I don't know who you're talking about," and so it was a little rough.
But by the way, also with Congresswoman Brown, she's not only rough, based on your being white. She's rough on a lot.
Right,
of
right,
things.
right, right, right.
Okay,
But I told her where our vision was, and by the end of the meeting, she gave me a hug.
All right.
And then we drove back to her office, and we got a call saying, "Can you come back?" And we went back, and that took us on an incredible journey. Now remember, that was just October of last year.
Right.
From that, I got invited to speak at the Congressional Black Caucus, and I
Okay.
spoke twice on 2 panels there about HBCUs. Congresswoman Brown introduced me to President Obama, so I met President Obama.
Okay.
And then this year, she and I met President Clinton.
Okay.
Oh, that was great. And then after that, because my other contacts, I met with.
I was going to say, when are you going to get introduced to the Republicans?
Well,
But anyhow.
I met with former Governor Bush.
Okay.
And again, he was very interested too. I mean, it's not what I have seen consistently. I'll move to this part. So the last big thing, last Saturday night, we had dinner, Thomas and I, with Martin Luther King III. Believe
how
it.
apropos. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had a wonderful time, and I was able to show him pictures of my dad and tell my dad's story, and it was a really just special time. And I asked Mr. King and his wife, I said, are you wanting to know why a white conservative Republican is helping out black colleges? And they both said, yes. Why? Why we want to know?
Exactly.
And so I said, listen, I'm doing it because of my faith, my faith in Christ and my belief as a Christian. That's the right thing to do. I said, it's about my family and my history. I said, but here's something else. It's good business. It's good business.
Absolutely.
Because diversity is not about lowering the bar. It's about widening the net. I say to people, in 1955, did the University of Alabama have the best team on the field? Were those the best players on the state? No, it was not.
Exactly.
Diversity made the team better, not lowered it. So I don't want to create my industry diverse by just hiring people of color. I want the best candidates. And some of the best candidates are women, and they're Hispanic, and they're African American, and they're Asian. They're from all over different times.
Absolutely.
But we have to start by getting them interested. I'm lecturing this coming week to about 200 freshmen at Bethune-Cookman University, and I'm going to get those kids fired up about having a potential career in real estate. And so it was funny because Mr. King said, John, maybe there's just 3 or 4 things we could agree upon, and let's find those things. And I said, respectfully, Mr. King, I don't want to do that. I think you and I agree about 90% of the time. I really do. I said, when I spoke at the Congressional Black Caucus, everyone agreed. And when I listened to the other speakers, I agreed. I really had a hard time finding things we were disagreeing about. Don't we all want education and jobs and health and practice our faith? I mean, we all want the same things.
Yeah.
We have to turn to talk and to translate those things there, right?
Yeah.
So it is. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
No. I think the thing that happens though is that often, we, and I'll say this is black, white, and all in between, get caught up on some of the minutia.
Right.
Also, even more important than that, get caught up on the method.
Right.
And that is that often things get stuck. Our folks in Washington get stuck when, if it comes from the quote unquote government.
Right.
Often people see that with a big G and say, well, that's going to be just feeding a bureaucracy. And then often on the other side, when folks see things coming from private industry, they'll say, oh, that's going to be serving self-serving interests, the so-called 1%, etc.
Right.
But I think that as I'm hearing, what you've done and the message is being able to make that connection between, let's say, a corporate entity,
Right.
but an individual within that corporate entity who sees the if you want to call it the the wealth creating, and the benefit that that is created by for all by what some people would call diversity,
Right.
or some other people would simply call inclusiveness.
Right.
Okay, so I agree with you that sense that there are probably more commonalities.
Sure.
But as in our history, as a nation, often the divisions, the differences have been emphasized more than the commonalities.
Right.
So again, I think what you're doing is to some awareness building,
Right.
as far as seeing where there are these connections and being able to see that the connections are some of the things that make things as our country to make them work, instead
Right.
of looking the other way and looking at what divides us. So
Right.
just thought I'd
You're right.
emphasize that as you're talking.
Aren't we all tied together in a single garment of destiny? Aren't we all tied together?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And-
And to quote our Democratic president, it's not red states or blue states, it's the United States.
Right.
And so, but often that's lost, in the dialogue.
Right.
And so we get caught up, in the kind of, categories,
Of course.
and speak out of that.
Well, it's to think about it. It's like, how does a Florida State University graduate varsity athlete get into the University of Florida alumni? How does that happen in Alumni Association? It happens because I did a lot of work for University of Florida. How did that happen? They asked. And if somebody's in need, we should help them, right?
Yeah.
We think about the story of the Good Samaritan. He saw somebody in need and he helped them and got in there and worked on it.
Exactly.
Something happened today that I think is so wonderful. So FAMU has this real estate club they've had now 5-6 years. So Bethune-Cookman, just in the last couple of weeks, started a real estate club. And I was copied on an email from the president of the FAMU club to the Bethune-Cookman club saying, how can I help you get started? I mean, that's wants me to get tears in my eyes, because
Yeah,
people
exactly.
say, well, they're enemies. There's a rivalry. Well, there's a fun rivalry, but no. These are good students trying to help each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so we should have passions about our teams or our communities and things like that. That's fun.
Yeah, and I think they will.
But there's things way more important. I
Exactly.
think about it this way. What if you and I were to decide that we want to be good drivers, and we said we're going to drive our cars well on I-4, but how everybody else drives doesn't matter. So if somebody decides to drive 110 miles an hour, drunk and weaving out of traffic, well, that's their business. That's be ridiculous, right? Because if they hit our car or hit up someone's family, well, isn't it the same thing if we were to say, well, I'm just going to take care of my family. If I have a home, if I'm educated, if I'm paying my taxes, and well, that's your no. If the higher percentage of people in our community are well educated, if they own homes, if they own businesses, if we're in community together, right?
Yeah.
We all win with that.
Exactly.
We're totally tied together. We can't separate things out and feel like that's how that's going to work. We're not. We're in community, right?
Why do you think that? And the what you've said, I absolutely agree with. And again, you would think that it's not rocket science. What has prevented us, as a nation, from embracing, more of this, and beginning to mutually build wealth, and as again, to quote our president, all boats rise,
Right.
together.
Right.
But somehow, and I'll go back. You just triggered a memory that I had. I remember this was many years ago that I worked for the Urban League in New York City, and we had a young man who was a city planner, who was Harvard educated, etc., who said, that the banks will allow Harlem to deteriorate by redlining to a point where those buildings, have reached a certain level. And then the policy will shift, and they will then begin to gentrify the neighborhood. And he said that Harlem will stabilize and become a upper middle class community. If there is, I think he said something like 70% white population and 30% black. And of course, this was a predominantly black staff. And so there was a big hubbub, and said, well, why does it happen, et cetera. And he said, based on some of the thinking at the time of financial institutions, of real estate professionals, and of the individuals who are the financiers of large projects, that's how the system thought at the time. So with what you're doing, and I'm hoping that there are many folks out there, more folks like you, or that you'll have planted enough seeds that folks will see the light. Why is it that there is just that lack of vision in seeing that, again, all boats can rise together?
Sure. Well, I think, let me answer in a big picture and then I'll go specific. I think the big picture answer is this, is that it's fear. I think that what limits all of us, what limits for people from taking any kind of risk, applying for a job or trying to apply for a different college or try to do a college, or trying a kid that's in school right now and trying out for the school play or joining the sports team or trying out for whatever. What is that? It's fear. And of course, we know, as a psychologist, that what does fear turn into? It turns into anger. And of course, when people are angry, and of course, then that can turn into sin and destruction behavior. So how do we then deal with fear? How do we conquer fear? We conquer fear through information, right? And so we talk about when you have a deep understanding that God loves you and that Christ died for you, and you understand concepts like grace and forgiveness and redemption, that's when dangerous people are created, dangerously good, because then they know, and then they'll take risks, and they make, when you make love-based decisions, that's what changes the world instead of fear-based decisions. So that's part of it. The other part, to answer your question, is that we live in a wonderful time. We live in a wonderful time. And I will tell you that in the circles I go in, people agree with me. When I'm alone and I'm just using labels here, but white, Republican, conservative, NRA members, some of them, and I'm just using labels, and I say, here's what we're doing, and this is what we're trying to do. I need help financially to raise money to support these colleges. I get checks. We needed to raise $100,000 to really launch this program at Bethune-Cookman. It took a handful of phone calls. And it was all white donors, it was all conservative donors, but it wasn't a hard push, it was an easy push, right? And what I find repeatedly is I meet business owners, retailers or real estate companies, they want diversity. They don't get the applicants. So in that situation, it's really a skill set. It's like if you ask me to do a backflip, I can't do it. You can scream at me, I still can't do it. I don't know how to do one, probably never will. But if we have skill sets, we need to learn how to do that. So I think that, and I meet people all the time in the business world, they don't know the difference between FAMU and Bethune-Cookman. They just know those are black colleges. And the only thing I said when I spoke to the Congressional Black Caucus that I think made a few people upset, I didn't mean to, but I said I think we should do away with the MEAC. And people say, why would you eliminate MEAC? Well, because I think that FAMU every week should play Stanford and Duke, right? And Vanderbilt and the University of Virginia. And why do I believe that? Because when their alumni interacting, those alumni seeing these outstanding alumni of FAMU, it changes dynamics, right? It's the same thing with Bethune-Cookman. I like to see Bethune-Cookman play UCF and USF, right? Because again, a lot of these different businesses aren't recruiting on this campus. They just don't know. But as I've started talking to business leaders, I've said, hey, when we launch this program at Bethune-Cookman and what we're doing at FAMU, now, by the way, we have real estate programs now building at both those universities. First two in the nation, right here in Florida. Yes, sir.
One of the things that, John, I'd like you to just, because I have to say, in terms of a college-based real estate program, I'm totally unfamiliar with that. So you're educating me as we're going along.
Sure.
What is a real estate program at a college? What does that look like?
Sure. I want to take you from one level to the major level. Let's start with some basic stuff, just to that. Not every kid that graduates from college needs to be able to play the trombone or know nursing skills or have an architectural skills or whatever. They all got to live somewhere, right? A lot of kids that are in college, they're in college and they were taught by their parents about what a mortgage is, how to buy a home, and what credit rating is, how to sign an apartment lease. But we've got students, some particularly at HBCUs, but other places, they don't know those basic things. The reality is, I could argue pretty hard in a lot of places, everyone should take a basic real estate course, because shouldn't you, at some point in time, you own a home or whatever? So that's one part. But the real answer to your question is, here's what you learn about. You learn about the principles of real estate, what is real estate, what is ownership of property. You learn about appraisal, how to value property. Okay, you learn about real estate investment. You know where you're putting money in and getting a return on that investment. You know, for me, I started as a finance major, and of course, all the finance majors wanted to be stockbrokers. And when you talk about portfolio management, I kind of didn't like that. It was abstract to me. But when you talk about owning a real estate and you have tenants, things that more felt more real.
Right. Okay.
And so I like that. Now, what's funny is that when kids graduate a degree in real estate, it's one of the very few degrees that the day you graduate, you can do a job and get compensated for it. If you have a degree in management, it doesn't mean that you can manage day one. But if you have a degree from the University of Florida, Master's in Real Estate, or if you have a degree from Florida State University, undergrad in Real Estate, or if you have a degree from University of Central Florida, undergrad in Real Estate, the day you graduate, you can do an appraisal. And appraisals are needed by banks and different folks. And day one, you can do that, and that's a needed job, and it's compensated, and the compensation is a good compensation, right? But it can go all kinds of areas. I always tell people that when you think about real estate, there's two areas. There's institutional and there's corporate. Institutional is the investment of real estate. So, you know, think about these corporations, pension funds that have billions of dollars. They put some of that money, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, in the stock market. But they also put hundreds of millions of dollars in investing, buying apartment buildings, buying industrial buildings, buying office towers.
Right.
Corporate real estate is corporations that own real estate because they use them. McDonald's, Publix, Walmart own millions of square feet of properties because they make burgers or Publix sub sandwiches where they show the best, by the way. You know,
but they've got to be house of
they own them.
Yeah.
And so they all have real estate departments. And so I tell college students, I say, name the coolest retailer you can think of. Anyone you can think of, like Apple. There's an Apple store. Well, somebody's the head of real estate for Apple, right? And so when you meet a business major and they say, well, I'm not interested in real estate. Well, do you want to be president of a company? Yes. Are you going to have a location? Are you going to have an office building? Right? Are you going to have an office? Well, you need to know how to sign an office lease. You know how to negotiate that, or you need to know how to hire somebody to do that for you.
Right.
So every corporation has some level of real estate. It's a major part of what they do.
What they do.
Right? And even if we said, what about pastors? Do churches own real estate? Right? Is that an important thing? And understanding those dynamics and facilities management, construction management. This is billions and billions of dollars. It's a very important industry. And what you'll find is that there are about 30 plus universities to have undergraduate programs in real estate. And you say, well, what universities are they? UCLA, USC, Indiana, Wisconsin, Texas, I don't understand Florida State, Wharton School. I mean, it's every one of them is universities you've heard of. They're major universities across the country, and none are historically black colleges. We're going to change that. We're going to change that. And when we do, it's going to make our business better for everybody. And I think it'll make our nation better for everybody. Because it is this core dynamic. Think about the word landlord. What does that come from? Well, you know, for all throughout most of history, and even around the world today, only the wealthy people owned land. Everybody else was working on the land. So the ability to own property, invest in property, it's helpful to everybody. And you think about situations where, you know what's bad is when you have a community, and in that community you have a group of people that are so disenfranchised that they see the police force as an invading army. That's a bad thing, right? And so if the police force doesn't trust them and they don't trust the police, and if that group of people doesn't own homes, so it means they're not paying real estate taxes, and so the cops feel like, well, they don't pay us. We had an experience, a negative experience, my brother and I, where we had a person in law enforcement that was illegally parking on one of our properties, okay? And my brother went up to the sheriff's deputy and said, you're illegally parking the property. And the sheriff's deputy kind of faced off my brother and told him to get out of there. So you know what we did? We called the sheriff's office. And the sheriff's office came and saw us and apologized. And that sheriff's deputy was written up for being that way. Well, we know that. You know, the cops work for us. I mean you and I. The sheriffs work for us, all of us. We pay taxes, they work for us. When you have a community that doesn't realize that, that they think the cops are an invading force, then you have a really bad situation because the people that need the most protection aren't getting protected.
Right.
And that's when the whole thing falls apart.
Right. Well, one of the things that I would agree with one part of it and disagree with another, and that is that because of not only the perception of the community, but as you know, the perception of law enforcement, that if let's say I were to go up to that same cop, you know, and say, you know, you're illegally parking, you know, on you know my property. Do you think you might get a slightly different reaction?
Well, I want to tell you this, that...
And that's a question.
No,
Okay.
the answer is sure, okay? Having said that, if that cop, remember that in my scenario, the law enforcement officer was disrespectful to my brother. It's when he went to the higher level.
Right.
So do I think Sheriff Demings would take you seriously? Yeah, I do. And I think that a lot of law enforcement would.
Well the likelihood, though, is that I'm not going to be encountered by Sheriff Demings. I'm going to be encountered by Officer Jones.
Right.
You know,
but here's the thing. We have to start somewhere. And so I would say that in that scenario, and if that happened to you, don't call the police chief, call me, and I'll call him for you.
Okay.
I mean, we have to start somewhere. I attended yesterday.
And
Go ahead,
I
please.
just want to pause. I think that's a wonderful connection.
Yeah.
And what you're doing by making the connections with the HBCUs are so important.
Right.
One of the things is that I believe that if the community knew, and hopefully our broadcast tonight will help, know that there are folks out there, you know, like you,
Yeah.
who would be, you know, if the person is appropriate, willing to speak up
Right.
and say that, no, you cannot treat this person as a potential criminal just because they happen to live on Mercy Drive,
Right.
you know, or in a certain neighborhood,
Sure.
et cetera. It's so important. But one of the points that you had made is that there's that sense of disconnection.
Right.
Part of what is probably a no-brainer to you is the sense that you are making those connections. And those connections can be lifelines, as you know.
Yeah.
Like the young man who responded to what you said and then came to you and you saw something and you saw that there was a purpose in making that connection.
Right.
And saw, if you want to call it, the spirit that he had. And were able to connect with that spirit positively. Unfortunately, so many of our young people don't get to see individuals like you. And I guess one of the questions that I pose, or to see if you can or we can brainstorm,
Sure.
and you may have the answers already.
Right.
How can we expose more of our young people to you or to individuals like you, you know, so that they can see more of a sense of hope, you know, a sense of the connectedness between themselves and the police force, a connectedness between themselves and the opportunities that are out there. So that's kind of my ongoing question.
Sure. I would tell you this. I have an expression I like to use, and I call it pioneer leadership. You know, that so many times in life people apply for jobs or they run for an office, and those are leadership positions that are in place, and those are good and wonderful things. When we want to change things, there's not a job, there's not a position. We got to create it. We got to go make that happen.
Right.
Now, when I said earlier about University of Florida, why was I so involved there and being a Seminole? Because they asked. Well, I'll tell you something. Bethune-Cookman didn't ask me. FAMU didn't ask me. I went after them, and I said, I'm going to endow this scholarship, and we're going to make these changes, and we're going to make your university better, and we're going to help your students. Now, that takes time, because sometimes people say that, not me, but others say, and they're not telling the truth, or they've got some sort of agenda, whereas you have to invest in those relationships over time. But then once you pioneer, it should be easier for others to follow. But I want to tell you, though, in my world, if I were to say to people that I'm around, and again, I'll use business, white collar, any kind of label you want to say, if I were to say that, hey, I have a friend and he's African American and he had this issue and this police officer didn't treat him right, they would be infuriated. They would say, that's wrong. How can we help? Right? And when I've said to people, hey, I'm going to do this at Bethune-Cookman, I'm going to do this at FAMU, I'm going to need your help, I have endless number of people that want to help.
Okay.
But part of it is I take the fear out of it for them, because they might say, well, what do I say? What do I do? And I say, well, look, I'm already there, and I'll help you. I've already created the bridge, and it'll be easy for you, right?
Right, okay.
And so we have to have, leaders have to step in. We have to have pastors, we have to have educators, we have to have business leaders that step into that and fill that gap. They can't be community organizers who say, well, I'll protect you from these bad people. No, no, no. There's good people over there. We're going to find the good ones, and we're going to work together. And a lot of times they are good. You know, I believe this, that let's think about terrible things in history. The Holocaust or slavery. Let me talk about Holocaust. Right? I have a friend of mine. She actually doesn't live too far from here, and her name's Mrs. Greenspun, and she's a Holocaust survivor. She dodged the Nazis for 2 years, was in labor camps for 2 years, and she was liberated from Dachau. When I asked her about how did she survive, fascinating thing she said was, good German soldiers. There were German soldiers that snuck her food. There were German soldiers that looked the other way, let her steal food. Right? When you look at the Holocaust, you think, how did that happen? Truly. Were most of those people bad people, and were they looking saying this is okay? I don't believe that. During slavery times, did most people own slaves? No, a very small percentage did. Were the rest of the people? No. But here's what they were. Please forgive me for that. They lacked integrity. And what do I mean by that? Integrity is truth plus action. It is knowing truth. What is truth? Truth is God's word. We get our truth from the Bible. When you take that truth and you know it, and you fail to act, that's a lack of integrity. President Jackson, president of Bethune-Cookman University, said to me, I love this line, I use it all the time now, he said, people said, why did you come out of retirement to help Bethune-Cookman University? He said, because it would have been immoral not to. Because he said, I have the skill set, and to sit back in a rocking chair and relax when I know this university needs my help and I'm qualified. So to me, I have a unique background. My dad was a lifelong Democrat. I'm a lifelong Republican, right? You know, I have a background where I've had relationships and things. I have this bridge building connectivity. When I told my mom that I had dinner with Mr. King, I said to her, I said, Mom, it was generations that made that moment happen. Let's not kid ourselves. That wasn't me making a decision. It was my grandfather and my father and my mother and my sisters and my brother. Years. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. All those people making the right decision that created that moment, right?
Having that sense of integrity.
Well, yes, and you know, my grandfather on my mother's side, very quiet man, thin man, unassuming guy. Didn't talk much, and I barely remember him saying much anything. But he had a dry cleaning and laundry business in Indianapolis, Indiana, and one day the Ku Klux Klan came in and said, we want you to wash our sheets. And he simply said, get out of here. Right? And that impacted my mom. My mom said I wasn't often proud of my dad. They didn't know each other that well. But I was proud of that. Right? But my point of saying all this is that, you know, we have to inspire people to be people of integrity, to be people of action, to be people of love, to be people of forgiveness. And we've got to turn off the negativity of saying, well, those white people are this way, or if they're a member of the NRA, they're this, or if they've been arrested, they're this, or if they've gone to this school or that school. What we've got to focus on is on the love part and doing the right thing. And that doesn't mean forgetting stuff and ignoring things.
Right, exactly.
We have to deal, just like you said, let's be real and talk about it. We can be real.
Well, one of the things I think is very, very important, and it's great that you've talked, you know, quite extensively about being a bridge, and I think that that's so important because often you'll know of or hear about someone in the community who is trying to make things better.
Right.
Many people in the community.
Right.
Sometimes you'll hear about a white businessman, let's say, for example, a Harris Rosen.
Sure.
Okay, who is trying to make things better. But often the ability to bridge so that that individual connects with the community, at times there's a gap.
Sure.
You know, and what I see you doing is being able to make that connection, to lessen that gap.
Right.
And so one thought that I had, and this is brainstorming, in the African American community, as you know, that the church is one of our remaining, organized the community organizations.
Right.
I'm wondering what has been the response of churchmen, of pastors, to what you've proposed, and their willingness to get involved, with something like that.
Wonderful. It's been wonderful.
Okay, yeah,
It's
just
been
talk
wonderful.
about that a little bit.
Well, if I had one request for you and Mr. Charles and your viewers, I would tell you that if you drive and you see a Crossman and Company sign, that you pray for me and you pray for our business.
Okay.
And I say that, pray for our business. I don't mean that it grow and be successful. That's what I mean. I mean you just pray that we're doing the things that God wants us to do. And whatever that is, if it grows, great. If it doesn't, that's fine. But pray for us. What I find is that we have absolutely enjoyed the prayer and the encouragement from so many different pastors. And what comes to my mind is Reverend Bracey. And when I saw him at the Onyx Awards, he was so kind. He gave me a hug, and I had never met his wife, his beautiful wife, introduced me. But when I see pastors, I immediately feel an overwhelming sense of thankfulness. And I said this to him. He was saying, John, thank you for what you're doing as a business leader. Thank you for what you're doing as a pastor. But again, I'm a preacher's kid. I know that. We were at dinner with Mr. King, and Tom's preacher, Mr. King's a preacher's kid, and all three of us were like, we know what it's like being a PK. That's a club.
Right, yeah.
But I think that it starts with having a high respect for them, and they have been absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. If we did not have the support of the church, both black and white, I don't know where we would be. But again, it comes back to is that one of the things my brother and I like to do is we like to try to provide resources to pastors for free. And so we've done a lot of events. I got my I'm Second bracelets on. We tried I'm Second, or we did the Christian Film Festival with my wife, and we did Purpose Orlando, and we always try to, Man in the Mirror we've been involved in. And so we've tried to provide resources to pastors. So we always want to know what pastors know. If you need our help, if you want to do a Bible study, we can give you books. If you wanted resources, we can do that for you. So we try to be an advocate for them. And it's important for them to know that not to be threatened by us. That, hey, we're not trying to go do something we're going to try to raise money that's taking money away from the church. We ain't going to do that. We're going to do things that are free, that give to the church. We don't do things that replace the church. We think all people should be involved in the church, and then they should be promoting and connected that way. Does that answer your question?
Well, yes, in many ways. One of the things that I wanted to say is that here in Orlando, as you know, we've got an ongoing problem with deteriorating, real estate properties, a lot of abandoned houses, etc., and a lot of individuals who are underwater,
right?
In perhaps having bought the first house that they had. For those individuals, it may be a bit late, but are there opportunities either through either developing, either a coalition of individuals that may be able to do a couple things, educate individuals to what they can do, in their circumstances, and also, are there sources that might be available for those individuals to be able to hang on to the properties that they have? One of the things that you may know is that after the Civil War, that there was a tremendous blossoming of blacks who bought property, who owned land, and not particularly waiting for that promise of the 40 acres and a mule.
I was talking about the other day.
Right, but entrepreneurs. That was in many ways crushed by the advent of the Jim Crow laws.
Sure. That was very strategic.
Very
strategic.
No,
and a lot of people don't know that. But yes, go ahead.
Okay.
Very strategic.
And so what I'm saying is that there is a book that you may have run across called The New Jim Crow, and talked about how there are not individual, let's say discrimination as such, but structural barriers that have been created over the years that have then eroded the black ownership, you know, of property. You probably know about the loss of farmland, you know, by black farmers, you know, et cetera. Are there some ways that in your work, you know, as a real estate person, that those individuals, either through some assistance, through, let's say, education, through resource, letting them know what resources are available, a way to build some momentum to regain that push,
Right.
and that hopefulness that occurred after the Civil War, that allowed many of those former slaves to not feel a sense of intimidation or a sense of fear,
Sure.
to be able to go for the gusto, as I like to say,
Right.
and to buy property.
Gotcha. I want to answer that by a very big picture comment,
Okay.
and then I will answer your question. So let's think about, since the dawn of man, right? If you lived in the year 5000 BC, or if you lived in the year 200 AD, was your lifestyle any different? It was pretty much the same, right? And then you have the Renaissance, and you have the inventing of the printing press, which changed history. And then you started getting into the 16th, 17th, 1800s, and you started having like 2 inventions a century, you know, the steam engine, things like that, that started changing people's life. And so then we get to the Industrial Revolution, and in 1903 you have the first airplane flown, Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers in North Carolina, 1903, and then 1969, right, 66-year era, man lands on the moon. Okay, I'm going somewhere with this. And everybody you know has an iPhone, right? And the technology that's in our hands with an iPhone is far superior than the technology that got us to the moon, right? So the jump, the spike in technology is unbelievable. The amount of resources we have is phenomenal and exciting and wonderful, right? Now, most people are doing what with that technology? They're playing Angry Birds, right?
Right.
Or they're listening to some music or whatever.
Right.
And what are they doing with it? Now, my company, we're a smaller company with 65 employees, plus or minus. If you rank the largest commercial real estate companies in the United States by size, number of employees, number 1 all the way down, I guess my company would be 1,000th, you know, on that list. If you rank commercial real estate companies right now from their social media presence, 1 to down, we're probably about 15th in the nation. Now think about that, right? So you say, well, how can that be? How can Crossman Company, this little tiny company in Orlando, Florida, be 15th in the nation, and we're pushing to try to get in the top 10? Because when we're sitting around on a Saturday, we're not thinking about Angry Birds or
Right.
we're like sitting back and thinking, how can we change the world? Okay? So when we're talking about Saturday morning, and I'm thinking about what? How do we solve this problem, HBCUs? Now, to your point is this. We need to know our history. No doubt about that. We need to know that. We should, it's a rear view mirror, which is that big. The windshield is this big. See me? So we need to study history and know it, but we got to think about the future. And we've got to get out there and focus on getting things done. Now, there are courses in real estate, really CCIM, one of the best courses. It's called the PhD of Real Estate. Anybody can take it.
What is it
It's called CCIM. Okay.
CCIM.
Yeah, great
Okay.
courses.
Right.
They have scholarships for CCIM. Okay, so people could take the class, apply scholarship, and go through them for free. You know what the biggest problem we have with CCIM scholarships? No one applies. No one applies.
Yeah.
I can't tell you.
Well,
So
one of the things I have to say is that's why I was asking you to repeat the name, because I'm not sure how many people are aware of that.
well, what I'm saying is that when I was lying on that couch in my house on Saturday morning, and I was up early, everyone was asleep, and I'm just lying there, I'm not sitting there thinking about all the problems and all the bad things that have happened, and you know, all the negative things. You know, I have that in me, but I'm trying to think, how do we solve the problem? How do we move the ball forward? And what I'm telling you is, I see it over and over again. There's a wide gate and a narrow gate. And people keep pouring through the wide gate, and they very seldom go through the narrow gate. And so what I'm saying is, we have to have more young people who get passionate about making an impact, and instead of talking about the past, talk about the future and take advantage of these things. So the answer to your question is, There are tons of resources out there for people who want to get education. You know, I'm a trustee for Valencia. I can't tell you how proud I am of Valencia. We have 350 students at Valencia that are technically homeless, and they're all scholarshiped. They don't pay. They're homeless, and they are scholarshiped. You can get your degree at Valencia and be homeless because we're going to get you through that program. And by the way, yesterday we had our grand opening for our School of Public Policy, Public Safety, and so we're having law enforcement classes and security classes. And I got to tell you, when we had that opening, it was as diverse can be. And we have rooms where we can have training and group discussions. So if you we're going back to that point earlier, I want to go back to housing, but when you mentioned that point, if you said to me, John, could we get a group of the top pastors in Orlando to meet with the top law enforcement agencies, and could we set up a group? And could you be the president? We call it whatever we call it.
Right.
You know, your group.
Right,
you know,
yeah.
we'll call it Charles Group. That's what
Right,
we call it.
there
You
you
know?
go, right.
But we call it, and we said, let's have a meeting 2 times a year. We meet with the head of law enforcement at Valencia, and we just talk about the most disenfranchised communities in Central Florida, and what do we do to fix it? Not what created it, not the back, but what do we do to fix it? We could do that. We can do that. And so the point of being is like, hey, we, the collective we, not you, we, all of us, we need more people in our community owning their homes, paying their taxes,
Absolutely.
and having financial security. And some of that's on them, learning how to budget, learning how to make things. The education's there. There's no greater time in education, and we can create those things, right? So I think about the National Entrepreneur Center that's at Fashion Square Mall.
Right.
Wonderful is Jerry Ross, executive director, but they have African American business associations there. That's John Davis runs that. Hispanic Chamber. They have tons of free resources that a lot of people just don't ever get, right?
That,
And
exactly.
they
yeah.
have free resources there. It's kind of never ending. But what I find is that most people just don't take that step. And we've got to take the step, and we've got to get on offense, and then we've got to encourage and get more passion out of people to go make that difference. You know, I'm going to get my industry diverse one way or another. It's going to happen. I mean, we're going to do it, my man. We're going to do it.
Well, I think that, again, I think that it's a win-win.
Of course it is.
Because obviously,
Yeah.
if there are more folks, you know, that are homeowners, both the residential and the commercial market, that's more business for you. That is more, you know, ownership, both responsibility and pride, you know, for folks in the community, et cetera. Just a couple things that I would ask, and I see we're all over time already.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm excited. I'm sorry.
Well, some of our best shows are the ones that run over. One of the things that I'd like to do, and that we've done at times, is to put some of the major resources, you know, on, you know, as a, if you want to call it a trailer, you know, on our website, so that individuals, when we archive it, they can go back, you know, and we can out in the community then say, listen, you know, check out John Crossman and his show, you know, in April 3rd, and you can, you know, find some resources there, or maybe even get in touch with him.
Well, I'll tell you this right now. You could put on LinkedIn, you know, John Crossman. I'm on LinkedIn. Any of your viewers that reach out to and want to connect to me on LinkedIn, I will accept.
He's on LinkedIn, folks.
LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and I tell you, I have over 13,000 connections on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Once you're connected to me, you can see all my contacts. In our day, we would say it's a Rolodex, right?
Right.
I will
exactly.
share my Rolodex. I will share my contact database with folks, okay? And so, and if you go look at my LinkedIn profile, I've got videos on there. I got videos of me lecturing at FAMU, videos of me at FSU, UF, all this kind of stuff. And I try to put all these things on there to share, and there's all kinds of free resources. There's articles there about leadership, and they're free. I want to be a person that provides resources. If you go to my website, www.crossmanco.com, there's a guide to commercial real estate that you can download and read it for free. And there's all kinds of information in there.
Okay.
You know, if you said, hey, I want to learn about getting into real estate, you don't need to call me. You can download that, use it, and go anywhere in the country and use that information. And it's free, and it'll always be there for free.
That is wonderful. One of the things, John, that you've also done, and that's something that is rather extraordinary, and I have not seen happen on our program before, and that is that Charles has not, you know, asked a question, you know,
Well,
or made a
it's
comment
I'm sorry.
it's
in
funny.
the last 50 minutes.
No, it's funny because I was just gonna say I had so many questions, but I didn't ask because it was flowing so, and there was so much information.
I'm
So I
sorry.
just
Yeah,
I
I
just
mean-
sat back and I was just quiet, just listening, because I've been in so much awe of His Spirit, and it's just a wonderful thing. And there's so many comments I wanted to make based on some of the things that he talked about, but I wanted to say that he had to come back on the show.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Anytime.
We have to.
Anytime. Be glad to.
Because we'd really like to hear more about the progress
Yeah.
of what's happening with that HBCU project. And our audience didn't boo us tonight, so that's a wonderful thing.
Well, they need dinner. They gotta go to sleep.
And they didn't go to sleep
They
on
didn't go to
us, you know.
sleep. Yeah.
So that's a wonderful. Thank you, audience. You did good.
Oh, can we take a look at?
Oh, are we still on?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness! I thought we were. already.
No. You know, we
Okay.
gotta talk about Pastor Jenkins for a second.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so
Right.
and again, you know, because this is Easter,
Right,
you know,
exactly.
weekend. Is there anything that you want to say in reference to Easter? And you know,
He is risen.
Mm,
He is risen. That's all I need to say.
very good.
okay, well,
And I'm going to defer to Pat.
I'm here with Pastor Jenkins from True Vine Baptist Church, and how you doing, Pastor?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. Unfortunately, you're a working man.
Amen.
And I mean in the sense that you
I'm
couldn't.
thankful.
No, I mean unfortunately you couldn't be with us live, so we decided to tape you because you're a working man. Is what I'm saying.
Amen.
Unfortunately, you couldn't be with us. So wanted to ask you because you know this coming Sunday as we celebrate Easter, in which I'm saying we'll see a lot of people we hadn't seen in a long time.
I'm
But
thankful for that. Too.
my question to you is, what is Easter to us, and what is it that we should be celebrating?
Again, thank you for having me. What I would tell the people of God and anyone that would come out and share with us on this day would be to focus on Jesus Christ, His death, His burial, and resurrection. That is, the Bible tells us, is the salvation for the church. Many can associate, first of all, the term Easter with other things. They can associate certain celebrations with things such as pagan history and historical events. However, I would encourage all believers and anyone in the fellowship of the believers to focus on what happened at this time, at a point in time in history. And what did happen at this time is that Christ died. He shedded His blood for the cleansing and washing of sins of man. And on the third day, He rose and to live evermore and to be our intercessor, prayer warrior for us, to be our guide through the Holy Spirit and our comfort as well. So I'd say focus on the salvation gospel, which is his death, His burial, and His resurrection, and not allow the commercialization of this day, as well as any historical debates or anything, to overshadow what it really means.
Is it okay to have an Easter egg?
Amen.
I'm just
Hunt for eggs. all of, as I said, all of those things, but you know, are okay for a leisure or curriculum. But as I said, as long as everyone keeps the whole focus, and there are other days in the year that we are given to our faith and events of our faith that are also shadowed with commercialization. So it's more or less just to encourage the people not get, as the old, I don't know if it's an old saying, but as a saying, you don't get caught up in the hype.
Right. Well, one of the things that I can share with you is that as a kid, one of the things that I remember when it comes to Easter as a child that I cherished so much was my time coloring the eggs with my grandmother. And then as I grew up, learning from you, Easter is the death and the resurrection of Christ, and that is what I attach Easter to. You know.
And again, these times, it's amazing how God can take what man thinks he has control of, and God takes it and forms other things, as such as the bond with your grandmother. You know, so how many families come closer together when they're wrapping presents and under a tree and those things. So even in these times, God uses them many times to heal our hurts and bond a lot of our bruises.
Right. Okay. Any last thing you want to say to people out there other than Happy Easter?
I'm just excited and thankful to be serving.
All right.
Man.
Okay. Can't wait for you to come on the show again.
I'm sorry?
Can't wait for you to come on the show again.
I can't wait to get there.
All right. All right.
Hello, Dr. Robinson.
Well, in closing out our program tonight, we would want to thank our guest, John Crossman, to thank his family, and the young ladies that were our audience tonight. You know, thank you very much for joining us. And we want to say to our viewers out there that we definitely will have Mr. Crossman back if and when he has the time. And also to say one of the couple things that have just crossed my mind as we're closing out, and that is this is a very special time of the year. We like to think of Christmas as being special, but Easter is an extraordinarily special time. It is a time where the people of faith, the Christian faith, but also, interestingly, the Jewish faith with Passover, us as Christians, you know, with Easter. But it is a time not only where man saw its greatest hope in Jesus Christ die, but the extraordinary part of it is that we also, from what we know of the Bible and of history, also learned of something extraordinary happening, and that is the resurrection of the Savior. So as we think about this season, as the pastor said, we need to not go for the hype, but go, for the integrity. We need to go for the sense of connectedness, and we need to go for the sense of faith. As is said both in Scripture and, the old folks have said, faith without works is
Dead.
Dead.
She said it.
Okay, there you go. And so, in closing out, I'd like to say the journey is from me to you, and from you to me, so that we can reach a higher plane and a higher place that we all know that can be. Good night. Join us next week, and have a happy, safe Easter and or Passover. Goodbye.